At the bank, my son pushed a pen into my hand. "Just sign, Mom. It's routine," he said, smiling, but his eyes were too sharp. His wife gripped my arm so tightly that it hurt. Her nails dug into my skin. I looked at the papers. I couldn't understand the small words written all over them, but I knew one thing. It wasn't routine. My heart began to pound. I was about to give away everything: my house, my savings, my life's work. So I did something that even surprised me. I slipped a note to the cashier with my shaking fingers. On it, I wrote 4 simple words. "Help. I'm being forced." The cashier's face changed instantly. Her eyes grew wide as plates. She gave a quick glance at me, then at my son and his wife. Without saying a word, she pressed something hidden under the counter. And then, the alarm went off. The sharp ringing filled the whole bank. Everyone froze. My son's face twisted into anger, and his wife's grip on my arm became even tighter. But before I could even breathe, someone shouted, "Police are on the way." And that's when everything broke loose. Hello everyone. My name is Margaret. I'm 72 years old, and I'm speaking to you from the state of Ohio, here in the United States. Before I continue this shocking story, I want to ask you a favor. Please, if you enjoy stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and click the notification button so you never miss what's coming next. And also, let me know in the comments, which part of the country are you watching from? I really want to know. Now, let me take you back to how this all began. I raised my son Daniel with love. His father died when Daniel was just 10 years old, so I worked 2 jobs to feed him and keep a roof over his head. I sold pies at the farmer's market on Saturdays, and during the week I cleaned houses. My hands grew rough, and my back bent from hard work, but I never complained. For years, I told myself it would all be worth it, because Daniel would grow up to be a good man. And for a while I believed he did. He got married to a woman named Jessica, and at first, I thought she was sweet. She would call me Mom, and bring me flowers on my birthday. But soon I noticed things, like how she would roll her eyes when I spoke, or how she whispered in Daniel's ear whenever I offered to help them. Slowly, Daniel began to change. He stopped visiting me alone. He only came with her. And whenever she was around, he never called me Mom anymore. Just Mother. Still, I tried to stay close. I told myself maybe it was just in my head. Then one Sunday afternoon, Daniel came to my house. He walked around the living room, looking at my things. He touched the old piano that had belonged to my grandmother. He even opened my drawers without asking. "Why are you doing that?" I asked. He smiled and said, "Just checking what's here, Mother." Those words made my stomach twist. But the worst was yet to come. A month later, he invited me to the bank. He said he wanted to help me organize my papers so that things would be easier for me. I trusted him. He was my son. When I got there, Jessica was waiting too. That should have been my first warning. But I told myself, don't be paranoid. He loves you. The papers were thick. Pages and pages of tiny writing. I could barely see the words. My eyes aren't what they used to be. "Just sign, Mom. It's routine," Daniel said, pushing the pen into my hand. I hesitated. That's when Jessica grabbed my arm hard, like she was afraid I would run away. I looked at both of them, and for the first time in my life I saw strangers in their faces. Cold strangers. So I made the choice that saved me. I wrote that note to the cashier. Now let me tell you, those seconds after the alarm rang felt like hours. People in the bank screamed. Some ran to the doors. My son looked at me like he wanted to break me in half. "What did you do?" he hissed. Jessica leaned close to my ear and whispered, "You're finished." My knees were trembling, but I kept standing. 2 guards ran in. They told everyone to stay still. Then one of them came straight to me and asked, "Ma'am, did you send a note?" I nodded slowly. Daniel's face turned pale. Jessica dropped my arm. But before I could explain anything, Daniel grabbed the papers off the table and shouted, "She's confused. My mother is sick. She doesn't know what she's doing." And then he pointed straight at me. "Arrest her," he yelled. The whole bank gasped. Even the guards froze for a moment. I opened my mouth, but the words got stuck in my throat. My own son was trying to make me look crazy. And that's when the doors of the bank burst open. The police had arrived. The doors of the bank slammed open, and in came 2 police officers. Their boots echoed against the shiny floor. Everyone went silent. You could hear nothing but the ringing alarm and my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Everyone stay calm," one of the officers shouted. "Hands where we can see them." Daniel's hand still clutched the papers, his knuckles white. Jessica's face was red, her lips trembling, but her eyes glared at me like daggers. I stood frozen in my spot, the pen still in my hand. The officer nearest to me walked up and said gently, "Ma'am, are you the one who sent the note?" I nodded, my throat dry. "She's lying," Daniel yelled, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "That's my mother. She's not well. She gets confused and paranoid. We were just helping her manage her things, and now she's making wild accusations. Please, officers, you have to believe me." The way he spoke, smooth, confident, practiced, made some people in the room nod as if they believed him. That was my son's gift. He had always been charming. But I knew the truth. I clenched my fists. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. "I'm not confused. He was trying to make me sign over my house and my savings. Look at the papers. Look at them." The room went silent again. The officer reached for the papers Daniel was clutching. Daniel hesitated, his jaw tightening, then reluctantly handed them over. The officer flipped through the pages quickly. His eyes narrowed. "These aren't routine forms. These are transfer of ownership documents. Ma'am, you were right to alert us." Gasps filled the bank. People whispered, pointing at Daniel and Jessica. For the first time, I saw fear flash across my son's face. Jessica grabbed his arm. "Don't just stand there, do something," she hissed. And that's when Daniel exploded. He lunged forward, grabbed my wrist, and shouted, "She's lying. She's destroying our family." His grip was rough, almost breaking my bones. I screamed. The officers rushed forward, prying him off me. One of them twisted his arms behind his back while Daniel thrashed like a wild animal. Jessica tried to pull him away, but the second officer held her back. "Calm down," the officer barked. But Daniel didn't calm down. His face turned red, spit flying from his mouth as he shouted, "She owes me everything. Everything she has belongs to me. I worked hard for nothing while she kept it all for herself. That's my money. That's my house. I deserve it." His words cut me deeper than any knife ever could. The officer looked at him in disgust. "Sir, you need to stop talking." But Daniel wouldn't stop. He fought like a man possessed. Finally, they dragged him to the ground, handcuffed him, and pulled him up. Jessica screamed and kicked, shouting, "You can't do this. She's just a crazy old woman." The cashier, the brave young woman who had taken my note, stepped forward and said firmly, "I saw everything. This woman was being forced. She was scared." Others in the bank nodded, adding their voices. "Yes, I saw her son grab her arm. She didn't want to sign. That woman was hurting her." The room had turned against Daniel and Jessica. But still, as the officers tried to lead them out, Daniel twisted his head toward me. His eyes, those eyes I once kissed goodnight when he was a boy, burned with hatred. "This isn't over, Mother," he snarled. "You'll regret this. I swear it." The chill that ran down my spine was worse than anything I had felt in my life. When the police took them away, I collapsed into a chair. My body was trembling all over. A kind stranger brought me a glass of water. The bank manager came to sit with me, his face full of concern. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked. "I don't know," I whispered. "That was my only son." He sighed. "Sometimes the people closest to us hurt us the most. But you did the right thing. If you had signed those papers, you would have lost everything." I nodded, though my heart ached. I thought of little Daniel, the boy who once brought me dandelions from the yard and told me I was the best mom in the world. Where had that boy gone? I wanted to cry, but no tears would come. The police asked me to come to the station to give a statement. I went with them, my hands still trembling. Inside, I told the officers everything. How Daniel had changed after marrying Jessica, how they pressured me, how today they tried to trick me into signing my life away. One officer shook his head and said, "Sadly, we see this a lot. Elder abuse. Family members taking advantage of their parents or grandparents. You were lucky you caught it in time." Lucky. I whispered. It doesn't feel like luck. It feels like I lost my son. They promised to investigate. They said there might be charges for fraud, coercion, even assault. But all I could think about was the look Daniel gave me, his promise that this wasn't over. That night, I went home alone. My little house felt empty and cold. I made myself a cup of tea, but it tasted like nothing. I sat by the window, staring out at the quiet street, my mind racing. I remembered every sacrifice I had made for Daniel. The nights I went to bed hungry so he could eat. The winters when I wore old coats so he could have new ones. The times I worked until my fingers bled, just to pay his school fees. And now he wanted to steal from me. The pain was unbearable. But I told myself one thing. If I had survived raising him alone, I would survive this too. I went to bed, praying for strength. The next morning, I heard a knock on my door. My heart jumped. I thought maybe it was the police with news. But when I opened it, my blood ran cold. It wasn't the police. It was Jessica. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her voice was sharp as a knife. "You think you won, old woman?" she hissed. "You ruined everything. But you don't know Daniel like I do. He'll find a way out of this. And when he does, he'll come for you." Before I could answer, she shoved a folded paper into my hands and stormed off. I stood frozen, staring at the paper. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a letter. From Daniel. The words were scrawled in anger, every line filled with venom. "You betrayed me. You chose strangers over your own blood. You'll regret the day you turned against me. Watch your back, mother. Watch your back." My knees almost gave out. The paper slipped from my fingers. And in that moment, I realized, this nightmare was only beginning. I sat in my chair staring at the letter for what felt like hours. My hands shook so badly I could hardly hold it. My son, the boy I raised with my whole heart, was threatening me like I was his enemy. The words kept repeating in my mind. "Watch your back, mother. Watch your back." I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every car that passed outside made me wonder if Jessica had come back. I locked all my doors, double-checked the windows, and even pushed a chair against my bedroom door. But still, my heart wouldn't calm down. The next morning, I went to the police station again. I showed them the letter. The officer in charge read it carefully, his brow furrowing deeper with each line. "This is a direct threat," he said firmly. "We're going to add this to the case. Daniel's already facing charges, but this makes it worse for him. Don't worry, ma'am, we'll keep an eye on you." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe I was safe now. But deep down I knew Daniel. He was clever, manipulative. He always found a way to get what he wanted. And prison walls wouldn't stop his anger. For a few weeks, things were quiet. Too quiet. I tried to go back to my normal life. Watering my garden, baking bread, going to church on Sundays. But every time the phone rang, I jumped. Every time the mail arrived, I checked twice, afraid another letter would be waiting. Neighbors came by sometimes to check on me. Mrs. Carter from next door brought me cookies and said, "You're brave, Margaret. Don't let him scare you." I smiled, but my heart still trembled. Because bravery isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and surviving anyway. Then one day the phone rang. I picked it up, and the voice on the other end made my blood freeze. "Mother," Daniel said, his tone calm, too calm. My mouth went dry. "Daniel, how are you even calling me?" He chuckled. "Prison isn't as strict as you think. I have friends. People who look out for me. You should know by now, I always find a way." I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Why are you doing this to me? I'm your mother." There was silence for a moment. Then his voice dropped, dark and cold. "You stopped being my mother the moment you betrayed me. And when I get out, because I will get out, I'll make sure you pay for this. You'll wish you had signed those papers." My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I called the police immediately, but when they traced the call, they told me something that made me nearly faint. "Ma'am, the call didn't come directly from the prison. It came from a prepaid cell phone." That meant Daniel had someone on the outside helping him. Someone was sneaking phones to him. Jessica. Of course it was her. The next days were a blur. I hardly left the house. I checked the locks again and again. At night, I kept the lights on, too scared to sleep in the dark. Then one evening, I was sitting in my living room when I heard it. Top, top, top. At my window. My blood ran cold. I turned slowly, my heart thudding in my ears. There, pressed against the glass, was a piece of paper. I stood up, legs trembling, and went closer. The paper was taped to the window from the outside. My stomach twisted as I read the words written in large, angry letters. I see you. I gasped and stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth. Whoever had put that there was gone now. The street outside was empty. I called the police again. They came, searched the yard, but found nothing. Probably kids playing pranks, one officer said, trying to calm me. But I knew better. This wasn't kids. This was Daniel's doing. Even from behind bars he was reaching me. The stress was eating me alive. My blood pressure shot up. My doctor told me I needed to rest, but how could I rest when danger was at my window? At church, people prayed for me. They told me to forgive Daniel, that maybe one day he would change. But how do you forgive someone who looks you in the eye and promises to destroy you? I felt alone, even though people were around me. Then came the night that changed everything. I was lying in bed, tossing and turning, when I heard it. The sound of my back door creaking open. My eyes shot wide. I held my breath listening. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Inside my house. Someone was here. I reached for the phone on my nightstand, but before I could dial, the footsteps stopped outside my bedroom door. Silence. Then, bang. The door shook violently as someone tried to kick it open. I screamed, "Open the door, mother!" A voice shouted from the other side. It was Daniel's voice. But how? He was supposed to be in prison. The door shook again, harder this time. Wood splintered. I backed into the corner, my whole body trembling. And then, the door burst open. The bedroom door exploded open with a crack, pieces of wood flying across the floor. I screamed and pressed myself against the corner of the room, my hands shaking so badly I could barely keep myself upright. And there, standing in the doorway, was a shadow. The hall light behind him cast his face in darkness, but the voice that followed made my blood run cold. "Mother," he said. It was Daniel. But how? He was supposed to be locked away. I blinked, certain my mind was playing tricks on me. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out every sound. He stepped into the room slowly, his figure growing clearer. His eyes burned with fury, his jaw clenched tight. "I told you this wasn't over," he growled. I could hardly breathe. "Daniel, no. You're supposed to be in prison." He smirked. "Prison can't hold me. You should have known that." I stumbled toward the nightstand, trying to grab the phone, but he was faster. He lunged, knocking it out of my hand. The phone slid under the bed. "You betrayed me," he spat. "After everything I sacrificed for you, you turned me into the police. Do you know how humiliating that was for me? For my wife?" Tears burned my eyes. "Daniel, I didn't betray you. You betrayed me. You tried to steal my house, my life. I raised you. I gave you everything I had." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Pain maybe. Regret. But it was gone in an instant, replaced with cold anger. "You should have just signed the papers," he said through clenched teeth. "Then none of this would have happened." I thought my heart would stop. I was alone, unarmed, trapped in my own bedroom with my son who looked at me not as a mother, but as an enemy. "Daniel, please," I whispered. "I'm your mother. You loved me once. Don't do this. Think about what you're doing." He laughed bitterly. "Love? You don't know the meaning of that word. If you loved me, you would have given me what I deserve. Instead, you exposed me, humiliated me. Now everyone thinks I'm a criminal. But you and I both know, I should have been the one in control." My knees went weak. I thought I would faint. But then I remembered something my grandmother used to tell me. "Fear makes you weak. Speak even when your voice shakes." So I spoke. "You're right about one thing," I said, my voice trembling but steady enough to carry. "Everyone does think you're a criminal, because that's what you've become. You've lost yourself, Daniel. And if you hurt me tonight, there will be no going back." For a split second, his face softened, his eyes darting away. My words had struck something inside him. But then, he clenched his fists, shaking his head violently. "No," he roared. "You're just trying to trick me again. That's all you ever do. Control me, make me feel small." He stepped closer, raising his hand as if to strike me. I flinched, closing my eyes. But before the blow could land, flash! A bright light burst through the window, and a booming voice shouted, "Police! Step away from her." I opened my eyes, stunned. Red and blue lights filled the room as officers rushed inside. Daniel froze, his hand still raised. For a moment he looked like a little boy caught stealing cookies from the jar. Then he snapped. He grabbed me by the shoulders and yanked me close, pressing me against his chest. His arm tightened around my neck. "She's coming with me," he shouted, his eyes wild. "If you take me, she comes too." The officers aimed their guns. "Let her go, Daniel. Don't make this worse." My breath came in short, sharp gasps. His grip was crushing me. I clawed at his arm, desperate for air. "Daniel, please," I choked out. "This isn't you. Stop before it's too late." But his eyes had gone dark, empty. He wasn't hearing me anymore. One of the officers stepped forward cautiously. "Daniel, if you hurt her, you'll never see daylight again. Let her go and we can talk about this." Daniel's jaw tightened. Sweat dripped down his forehead. He looked at the officers, then back at me. "You'll always choose them over me, won't you?" he whispered, his voice breaking. Tears streamed down my face. "I will always choose what's right. And this isn't right, Daniel." For a moment his grip loosened. I thought just maybe he would let me go. But then his face twisted with rage again. He pulled me tighter, dragging me toward the broken door. "Then we both go down together," he shouted. And in that terrifying instant, he pulled something shiny out of his pocket. It was a knife. The officers shouted in unison. "Drop it! Drop the weapon now!" Daniel's breathing grew wild. His grip on me tightened, the knife hovering inches from my neck. And in that frozen moment I realized my son might actually kill me. The cold steel of the knife pressed against my skin, so close I could feel its edge. My whole body trembled as Daniel held me tight against him. His chest rose and fell in heavy, frantic breaths, and I could hear the wild beat of his heart. "Drop the weapon, Daniel!" the officer shouted again, his voice booming through the room. "This is your last warning." But Daniel just pressed the knife harder against me, his arm shaking. "You don't get it," he screamed. "She's the one who ruined everything. She's the reason I'm here. If anyone should be punished, it's her." Tears ran down my cheeks, but I forced myself to speak. My voice was weak, but I tried to sound strong. "Daniel, listen to me. I'm still your mother. This doesn't have to end this way. Put the knife down and we can fix this." His grip faltered for a split second and I felt a flicker of hope. But then Jessica's voice cut through the chaos. From the hallway she appeared, her hair messy, her face twisted with rage. "Don't listen to her, Daniel," she shouted. "She's a liar. She's always been against you. Do it, make her pay." The room froze. Even the police turned their eyes toward her. "Ma'am, stay back," one officer yelled. But Jessica didn't move. Her eyes burned into me like fire. "She'll never give you what you deserve, Daniel. Don't you see? She wants you in prison so she can live her happy little life while we suffer." Daniel's breathing grew heavier, his arm trembling around my neck. He was torn. I could feel it. "Stop it, Jessica," I cried out. "You're poisoning him. He was a good boy once, but you twisted him. You filled his head with lies." "Lies," Jessica spat, stepping closer. "The only liar here is you. If you really loved him, you'd have signed those papers and given him what he needed. But no, you chose yourself like you always do." The police officers moved, circling slowly, their guns still raised. The tension was unbearable. Daniel's grip shifted. He looked back and forth between us, his wife and his mother. My heart pounded. This was the moment, the choice that would decide everything. For a split second I thought he would drop the knife. His eyes softened, his breathing slowed. But then Jessica screamed again. "Do it, Daniel. If you don't, you'll lose everything. She's the enemy." Something snapped inside him. He tightened his grip on me and shouted, "Fine. If I can't have peace, nobody will. The knife rose higher. The officers moved instantly. Don't do it, one shouted. But Daniel pressed the blade closer, his voice breaking with madness. Stay back, or she dies. I could barely breathe. My world spun. My own son, my only son, was ready to end my life. Daniel, I whispered, my voice trembling but steady enough to cut through the shouting. If you do this, you'll lose me forever. And I know deep down you don't want that. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. His hand shook violently. His breath hitched. The knife lowered just a little. The officers leaned forward, ready to pounce. But then Jessica made a move I never expected. She lunged forward, trying to grab the knife from his hand. Give it to me. I'll do it, she shrieked. The room erupted in chaos. Daniel jerked backward, dragging me with him. Jessica clawed at the knife, screaming. The officers shouted commands, rushing forward. And in the struggle, the blade cut deep. Not into me, but into Jessica. She gasped, her eyes wide in shock. The knife had slashed across her arm. Blood poured down as she stumbled back, clutching the wound. Daniel froze, staring at the blood on the knife. His face twisted in horror. No, I didn't mean to, he muttered. The officers seized the moment. They lunged, grabbing him, pulling me free from his grip. I collapsed to the floor, coughing and sobbing. Daniel fought, but his strength was gone. He was dragged to the ground, the knife kicked away. Handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. Jessica screamed, blood dripping between her fingers. Daniel, don't let them take you. But it was too late. The police hauled him up, his face pale, his eyes empty. He looked at me one last time, and the words he spoke chilled me to the bone. This isn't over, Mother. Not even prison can stop me. And then they dragged him away. Hours later, I sat in the hospital waiting room, my hands still shaking. Jessica had been taken into surgery for her wound. The police assured me she would survive. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the truth I could no longer deny. My son hated me. The boy I once held in my arms, sang lullabies to, and prayed over at night. He was gone. In his place was a man filled with greed, anger, and hate. And as much as it tore me apart, I knew I had to protect myself. I stared out the window into the dark night, whispering to myself, Lord, give me strength, because I know this war isn't finished yet. And just as I closed my eyes, praying for peace, my phone buzzed. I picked it up with trembling fingers. A new message appeared on the screen. It was from an unknown number. The words made my blood run cold. He won't be in prison long. And when he comes out, we'll both be there, waiting. The text glowed on my phone screen, its words stabbing me like knives. He won't be in prison long. And when he comes out, we'll both be there, waiting. I stared at it, my hands trembling. My mind screamed with questions. Who sent it? Was it Daniel? Or Jessica? But Jessica was in surgery, and Daniel was already in custody, which meant there was someone else. Someone helping them. The room spun. I felt sick to my stomach. The next morning, I went straight to the police station with the phone in my hand. I showed the officer on duty the message. He frowned, typing quickly on his computer. We'll trace the number, ma'am. But whoever this is, they're using prepaid burners. It's hard to track. So you're saying they could be anywhere? I asked, my voice cracking. He sighed. For now, yes. But we'll increase patrols near your home. We'll make sure someone's watching your street. I nodded, but it gave me little comfort. Because if Daniel had people helping him, then patrol cars wouldn't be enough. Days passed, each one heavier than the last. I jumped at shadows. The creak of my old house made me flinch. I couldn't sleep without keeping a light on in every room. My neighbors tried to reassure me, but their words felt thin. Then one afternoon, I heard a knock at my door. When I opened it, I nearly collapsed. Standing there was Jessica. Her arm was wrapped in bandages, her face pale but her eyes just as sharp as ever. I tried to shut the door, but she pushed against it with surprising strength. Wait, Margaret, she said quickly. I didn't come here to hurt you. My stomach twisted. Why should I believe you? After everything you've done. Her lips curled into a bitter smile. Because Daniel doesn't know I'm here. And if he did, he'd kill me. I froze. What are you talking about? She glanced around nervously, then lowered her voice. You think he only hates you? No. He hates me too. That night when he cut me, it wasn't an accident. He would have killed me if the police hadn't come. Her words sent a chill down my spine. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Because you need to know the truth, she said. Daniel isn't working alone. He has people outside, people who owe him favors. And they'll do anything he asks, even if he's behind bars. I swallowed hard. So that message on my phone. She nodded. It wasn't from me, but it was from someone close to him. My knees felt weak. I gripped the edge of the door to steady myself. Jessica leaned closer, her eyes darting around. Listen to me. Daniel's planning something bigger. He's obsessed with destroying you. And if you don't get out of town soon, you won't survive. I stared at her, speechless. She straightened up, her expression unreadable. That's all I can tell you. Believe me or don't. But when the time comes, you'll remember this. Then she turned and walked away, leaving me frozen at the door. That night, I sat alone, replaying her words again and again. Should I trust her? Or was this another one of her tricks? I didn't know. But one thing was clear. Danger was closing in on me. I decided to stay alert. I checked my locks twice, then 3 times. I pulled my curtains shut tight. I even placed a kitchen knife under my pillow. But even with all that, sleep never came. Around midnight, I heard it. The faint sound of gravel crunching outside my window. My blood turned to ice. I tiptoed to the window and peeked through a crack in the curtain. At first I saw nothing. Just the dark street and the faint glow of a street lamp. But then movement. A shadow. Someone was standing by my mailbox. My hands shook as I reached for the phone. I dialed 911, whispering urgently to the operator. Please, someone's outside my house. Please hurry. The shadow bent down, placing something inside the mailbox. Then, without a sound, it disappeared into the night. Moments later, red and blue lights filled the street as police cars arrived. An officer checked the mailbox carefully, wearing gloves. He pulled out a small brown envelope. Ma'am, he said, his face grim. You should see this. He handed it to me. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single photograph. It was me. Taken from outside my window, just hours earlier. The picture showed me sitting in my chair by the lamp, completely unaware. At the bottom of the photo, in black marker, were 3 words. We are close. The photograph felt like ice in my hands. I sat very still at the kitchen table, staring at the picture of myself. My name, my face, the lamp I always left on at night. All shone from somewhere outside my window. Underneath, the 3 words that made my lungs tighten. We are close. For a moment everything stopped. The clock on the wall ticked, but I hardly heard it. The police around me moved and talked, but it all sounded far away, like people in a distant room. My skin crawled. Someone had watched me. Someone had come to my house and taken that picture while I sat inside and read my Bible and stirred tea in a small mug. Who could do this? I asked aloud, my voice a small, frightened thing. The young officer who had brought the photo cleared his throat. We'll do everything we can, ma'am. We'll check security cameras on your street. We'll talk to neighbors. We'll see if any stores have footage from tonight. I nodded, but my heart was already pounding in a new rhythm. The rhythm of being hunted. That afternoon more officers came and went. They asked the neighbors the same questions over and over. Did you see anyone strange? Did you hear a car? Do you have any surveillance cameras? Mrs. Carter from across the street hugged me and said, Margaret, don't be alone tonight. Come over and sleep at my house. Her voice was soft, trying to be brave for me. I wanted to go. I wanted to sleep under someone else's roof where the curtains were not the same, and the windows did not face the same dark street. But my house felt like part of me. The garden I had planted after my husband died, the photos on the mantel, the little dent in the kitchen table where Daniel once carved his initials as a boy. I could not leave it just like that. Part of me hoped staying would prove whoever was watching wrong. I told myself I was being silly. I told myself I was safe because Daniel was in custody. But the picture said otherwise. That evening, The detective called me himself. He spoke slow and steady, the kind of voice trained to keep people calm. "We found footprints near your mailbox," he said. "They're small, like a woman's shoes or a young person's. We also found the brown envelope. We're going to take door-to-door statements. Please, if you notice anything else, any cars that come and go, any people standing around, call us immediately." I promised I would. After I hung up, I locked the doors and double-checked the windows. I drew the curtains tight, as if that could keep eyes from peeking in. My hands were sore from working the bolts. Night came slowly. I sat in the living room with the lamp on and a blanket around my shoulders. The phone sat on the table like a small raft, my connection to help if something happened. I tried to read, but the words on the page swam. Instead, I stared at the curtain window and remembered the photograph. My small lamp, my soft chair, the way I sat knitting sometimes and watching old shows on television. Later, I heard footsteps outside. My heart leaped up into my throat. I reached for the phone, but then the footsteps stopped. Silence filled the air until I realized the sound came from my own house. Upstairs, in the attic. The old house sometimes settles and makes noises like animals, but tonight everything sounded wrong. I crept through the hallway, the blanket slipping from my shoulders, and climbed the attic ladder that led to the small storage space above my room. The ladder creaked and my breath came short. Up there, boxes of old clothes and photo albums sat in the dark. Something moved among the boxes. A rustle, then a whisper of fabric. I froze. Whoever it was had to be very quiet. "Hello," I called, my voice small but trying to be firm. Silence. I took another step and the flashlight I kept in the hall trembled in my hand. I clicked it on and a narrow beam cut through the dust and boxes. A shadow ducked behind a stack of cardboard. For a second I saw a flash, a hooded jacket, a small figure. Then the shadow sprinted down the ladder as if shot from a bow, not stopping until the back door slammed so hard the glass rattled in the frame. I ran after them, but when I pushed the back door open, the street was empty. Only the night air moved, and the distant hum of a car. On the back step, I found more footprints, smaller than the ones the police had found by the mailbox. They led away across the garden and into the darkness. I called the police. They arrived quickly this time, lights painting the yard red and blue. They took the prints and dusted for fingerprints on the back door frame. A neighbor shone a flashlight from his porch, his face pale in the beam. "You all right, Miss Margaret?" he asked in a small voice. I nodded, but I couldn't speak. My hands were cold and shaking. The detective stood in my kitchen holding a small strip of plastic evidence bag. "There are fibers on your attic boxes," he said. "Synthetic fibers, like from a hooded sweatshirt. We'll test them. For now, stay with the neighbor. We'll set up more patrols." I left my house and went to Mrs. Carter's. Her apartment smelled of coffee and lavender and safety. She made me sit in her chair and wrapped a blanket around my knees. I took small sips of tea that burned my throat but steadied me. Somewhere inside, a stubborn spark still said, "You can handle this. You survived worse. You will survive now too." But survive how? Daniel was in prison and had people working for him outside. Someone had climbed into my attic, taken the picture, and left me a message. Someone was inside my house. The next day, the neighbors gathered like a small army. People patched the back of my garden with plastic tape, installed motion lights, and offered their own cameras. A young man named Luis mounted a cheap camera on my porch and ran a wire into my living room. He promised to watch the feed with his own phone. "It'll beep you if anyone comes near," Luis said cheerfully. He did not know how much relief his small act gave me. For a week the camera watched the porch and the yard. It recorded squirrels, the mailman, and then on the 7th night, a car parked on the street for a long, slow minute. A tall man got out, stretched, and walked to the mailbox. He wore a hat pulled low. He looked around like someone looking for trouble. He took something from the mailbox and put it into his coat pocket. The car drove off. We captured his license plate, but it was not registered to anyone interesting. The detective promised to trace the number, but I felt the old worry that every lead would be a dead end. That afternoon, the detective came to see me with a folder. Inside were pictures. A shot from a gas station camera, a man buying a prepaid phone, a photo of a woman in a hoodie walking down my street the night before, and finally, a photo of Jessica leaving my house the day she came with her bandaged arm. Jessica's been seen around town. the detective said. She's not exactly blameless. But we're also seeing a pattern. This man with the hat shows up near where Daniel's friends hang out. We're looking into whether he's tied to Daniel. The news made my stomach churn. Daniel had found or hired people who could move around the city for him. That was the scary part, the reach. He could reach me through other hands. That night, I tried the locks again and lay with the light on. Luis's camera blinked on the table, ready. I had my Bible and a pack of pills in case my heart beat too fast. I told myself I would not be an easy target. Around 2 in the morning, the camera beeped. On the screen a small figure moved across the yard. It was hard to make out anything more than a dark shape. The person crept close to the window and stood very still like a statue. I held my breath. Then the person lifted a hand and tapped on the glass. A single, soft tap at my window. My heart stopped. I looked toward the sound but could see only a dark shape. I could not tell if it was a man or a woman. The figure moved away slowly and vanished into the night. I reached for the phone with shaking hands. The image in the camera showed the figure bending and placing something on the step. Another envelope, perhaps. Before I could call, the figure was gone. I ran to the back door and opened it. On the step lay a folded note. I picked it up with fingers that felt numb. This time there were no words written in bold. Just a single sentence in careful printing. Soon. My breath left me like air through a straw. I stood there on the step holding that tiny slip of paper, and realized that the person watching knew me too well. They knew my hours, my habits, the light on the lamp. They knew how to scare me. And worse. They knew how close they were to breaking in. I called the detective. He came fast, his face white with worry now. He held the note in his gloved hands and said, "This is targeted, Margaret. This is harassment and stalking. We'll do everything we can, but you might consider staying somewhere safer for a while." I understood what he meant. But the house was my home. My heart and my memories lived there. As the detective drove away, I looked at the dark street and whispered to the empty night, "Who are you? What do you want?" As the detective drove away, I looked at the dark street and whispered to the empty night, "Who are you? What do you want?" No answer came. Only the quiet and the distant hum of a car driving away. Then somewhere down the block, a dog barked and a metal gate slammed as if someone were leaving in a hurry. I closed the back door, locked it, and slid the deadbolt. I checked every window. My hands were trembling. My mind raced with terrifying possibilities. That night I prayed until the dawn, asking for protection and courage. But I did not sleep, because I knew that someone was very close, closer than I wanted to imagine. And on the horizon of that fear, something worse was already moving into place. The note that said soon sat on my kitchen table like a cold stone. I stared at it until the letters blurred. My hands shook as if a wind had passed through my body. I had lived a long life, seen many storms, but nothing felt like this. This was not wind or weather. This was someone who wanted to break me slowly, like the way people drip water onto a stone until it wears away. Neighbors kept watch the next few nights. Luis checked his camera every hour and texted me little updates. "All quiet," he would say, or, "Saw a cat, nothing else." The police came often, asking questions, taking notes, and promising to do more patrols. They were kind. They were serious. But the feeling in my chest did not leave. I told myself to be brave. I walked in my garden during the day and picked the last of the roses. I watered the petunias and spoke to them like old friends. People came to visit and brought casseroles and kind words. I smiled and thanked them, but in the back of my mind I kept thinking of the camera image of me in my chair, unaware, and of the small figure that had crept into my attic. I could not shake the feeling that my house, my memories, and my life had become a stage where cruel people acted out their plans. One morning the detective called. "We found prints on the back doorknob," he said. "We are testing them. Also, some fingerprints match a man who has a record for intimidation. We're looking into it now." "Hurry," I said softly. "Please hurry." "We will," he promised. "For now, avoid being alone at night. Stay with a neighbor if you can. We can offer a temporary safe house if that helps." I thought about leaving. The idea made my stomach hurt. My home is where my husband's picture hangs, where Daniel's baby shoes sit in a box, where every corner holds a memory. To leave it would feel like losing another part of myself. But to stay felt like leaving the door open to a wolf. That night I packed a small bag just in case. I put a few dresses, underwear, my Bible, a photograph of my late husband, and some money in a small bag. I left it by the front door and told Mrs. Carter I might come over if I felt unsafe. I fell asleep that night on her couch, but only after I called Luis and asked him to keep the camera feed on, and to call me if anything moved. At 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed. I sat up so fast the blanket fell off me. I answered before I even opened my eyes. "Ma'am," Luis whispered. "Someone's at your back door. I can see them on the feed." My heart hammered. I told Mrs. Carter and her husband, but they were too sleepy to be useful right then. I slipped into my coat and walked quietly to the back door. The kitchen light was dim, but I could see a dark shape through the glass. The shape moved like a shadow. I reached for the knob, but stopped because I knew better than to let a stranger have a way in. Instead I called 911 and whispered the address. The operator said police were on the way. I stood very still and watched. The shadow moved to the side of the house where the small storage window was. For a moment it seemed like the figure tried the window. Then it heard something and froze. A voice, low and soft, whispered from the darkness. I could not make out the words, but the tone felt familiar, like someone saying a name to a friend. The shadow then moved toward the back fence and slipped away like it had never been there. The police arrived within minutes and swept the yard. They found footprints by the compost bin, small like the others. They took pictures and whispered among themselves. One officer looked at me and said, "They're getting braver. We caught them in your yard tonight." I nodded but did not say how afraid I felt. How could I say it? I had been brave my whole life. I had buried a husband, raised a child alone, and worked my fingers raw for every cent. I had never been afraid of men in uniforms or thunder, or long winters. But I was afraid of what people could do when their hearts turned cold. Days passed. The police worked. The detective called with updates, bits of evidence, a name here, a phone number there. He said the man with the hat was tied to a small gang that Daniel knew from years ago. They were not big-time criminals, he said, just messy and dangerous. People who did favors for others for money or for power. "Keep your bag ready," he told me. "If we see anything unusual, leave immediately and call us." I wanted to argue, to say that my home was my home, and I would not be chased from it like a fox. But I did not. I kept the bag by the door. One evening, I heard a great noise from the street. Cars were honking. People were shouting. I saw blue lights flash and men running. I looked out the window and saw a crowd gather across the street. The police were there in force. Someone had been hurt. I put on my coat and walked outside slowly. Mrs. Carter held my arm. "They caught someone down by the park," she said. "He was carrying a box of burner phones. They think he sold them to people who wanted to make threats." I felt a surge of hope as the police led a thin, scared man in handcuffs past us. He looked young and small, not like the shadow who had broken into my attic. But the detective told a different story. "We arrested one of them," he said. "He's a runner. Lives on the edge of town. He knows the men who work for Daniel. He bought phones that were used to send the messages. It's not everything, but it's something. We may be closer to finding who told them to stalk you." That night I slept a little better. The weight in my chest lightened. But I also knew that catching a runner did not stop those who had planned it. Someone else could step in quickly, as fast as a storm. The next morning, I found a card left on my doorstep. It had no return name and no address. The card was plain, but the message inside made my hands tremble. "You should leave. You will be safer if you go. Or stay and watch what we take from you." Under that, a small smear of dirt, like the mark of a boot, had been pressed. It felt like a promise. I called the detective. He was not surprised. "They're trying to push you out," he said. "That's what they do. Don't show fear. Don't let them know they scare you." But how do you hide fear when someone climbs into your attic and takes pictures of you like you are meat for a trap? That evening I decided to check the attic myself. I had an old ladder that folded by the pantry. I took a flashlight and climbed up slowly. The attic had been where Daniel used to hide his little toy cars when he was small. It was a place that smelled of cedar and dust and old summers. Tonight it smelled of something else. Someone else had been there. I saw scuff marks on the wooden floor, and the boxes pushed aside. On one box sat a small piece of plastic, black and burned on one edge. It looked like part of a lighter. Someone had left it there, maybe by accident, or maybe as a sign. I took the piece and put it in an envelope. I also found a scrap of cloth caught on a nail, gray fleece, the kind of hooded sweatshirt a young person might wear. My hands found that small scrap and held it to my face. I wanted to keep it like a talisman, proof that this was real, and also proof that I could fight back. Just then I heard a noise from downstairs, footsteps heavy and quick. I froze. The attic ladder creaked. I wanted to call out, but my voice felt small. The footsteps stopped below the attic door. Then someone whispered, quiet as a wind, "Mrs. Margaret?" My breath left me. I did not know whether to answer. The voice sounded low and a little rough. It was a man's voice. My mind flashed to the detective's words about the man with the hat and the runner. Had he come back? Had he brought friends? "Who is there?" I called, trying to sound steady. Silence. Then the voice again, closer now, as if someone had climbed the steps. "Please don't scream. We don't want trouble. We just want to talk." Talk. My heart thought. They had been watching me for weeks. They had crept in, left photos, and threatened me. Now they wanted to talk. The attic hatch opened slowly. A shadow leaned toward me, and for a moment I thought it might be the runner the police had taken. But this shadow was taller. A broad shoulder, a low hat. He must have a flashlight. His face was half in light. I rose slowly to my feet. The man put his hands up like an old movie thief caught with a pocketful of bread. "Mrs. Margaret," he said again, softer now. "I don't want to hurt you. I'm not one of the bad ones. I was told to watch the house. I didn't know it would go this far." I wanted to believe him. I wanted someone to be honest and human. I thought of Daniel as a frightened boy who had once feared thunder, of the man he had become. Maybe there were people who had been dragged into this who could be turned away. "What do you want?" I asked. He looked at me with tired eyes. "We work for people. But some of us don't like what we do. I can help you. I can tell you who is behind it." Hope flushed through me like sunlight. "Who?" He hesitated, like a man who feared the words inside his head. "I can't say here," he whispered. "It's not safe. Come down. Let's talk where no one hears us." My hands trembled. I knew better than to go into the dark with a stranger. I also knew that this could be my only chance to get answers and to stop them. As I moved toward the ladder to climb down, a small sound came from outside. The click of a car door, the low hum of an engine. In the distance a siren wailed once, then faded. The man in the attic's eyes flicked to the window and back to me. He seemed to fear what the noise meant. "We don't have time," he said quietly. "If they find out I spoke, they'll..." He did not finish the sentence. Outside the engine grew louder. Headlights cut through the curtains below, bright and fast. Suddenly, without warning, the attic hatch banged open from the other side. A second shadow pushed through. It was big and fast and filled the ladder mouth like a hungry mouth. "Get down," the big shadow barked. His voice was not hopeful or soft. It had teeth. "Now." Before I could breathe, hands grabbed my arms and pulled me toward the ladder. The first man who had spoken shoved me down one step, then another. My feet hit the attic floor. The ladder swung dangerously as three men pushed in and pulled me through, their faces masked in scarves and horror that felt like steel. "What are you doing?" cried out. The man who had seemed like a helper shoved me hard. "Sorry, Mom." "No time to explain. You're coming with us." My heart jumped so fast my chest hurt. I tried to pull away, to call out to Mrs. Carter, to the police, but the men were strong and quick. They bundled me down the ladder like a sack of grain, one arm over my mouth to keep me silent. We moved fast through the dark house. My feet did not touch the floor like they used to. There was a rush of cold air as we passed the back door. I wondered if the police were outside, if lights were flashing. Somewhere, a horn honked and a voice shouted. The men did not stop. They shoved me into the back seat of a small car. The engine roared. The driver slammed the door. I saw the face of the man who had first spoken. It was young, and his eyes were wet with something I could not name. He looked at me and then looked away. The car sped off into the night. Lights blurred. The wind hit my face. I tried to scream, but my mouth felt gluey and small. The men in the car sat like statues, their hands white on the steering wheel. I thought of the Bible in my bag, the photo of my husband, the roses in the garden. I thought of Daniel, handcuffed and in a cell, and of the way his eyes had once looked at me. I thought of the house, my safe place. And then the car rushed into a long dark road, and something heavy hit the back of my head, hard, quick, and everything went black. When I woke up, my head throbbed as if drums were beating inside my skull. My vision blurred, colors swimming together like spilled paint. For a moment I thought I was still dreaming. But then I smelled damp wood, mildew, and the sharp bite of gasoline. I was no longer in my house. I lay on a cold wooden floor. My wrists were tied with rough rope, and my ankles were bound the same way. A single bare light bulb swung above me, casting long, sick shadows across the walls. The place looked like an old cabin or maybe an abandoned workshop. The memories crashed back. Men pulling me down the attic ladder. The car roaring into the night, the strike to my head. Fear jolted through me so strong I could hardly breathe. Somewhere in the room a voice muttered, "She's awake." I turned my head and saw them, 3 men. One stood by the door, tall with a black scarf around his face. Another leaned against the wall, his hat pulled low. The third, the one who had spoken to me in the attic, paced nervously, avoiding my eyes. My throat was dry. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice cracked but steady enough to be heard. The man by the door gave a cold laugh. "Orders, lady. You should have listened when we told you to leave." Orders. That word cut through me. Orders from who? Daniel? Or someone else even worse? The man with the hat pulled a phone from his pocket and scrolled, then nodded to the others. "She's staying here till he says what's next." I knew who they meant without asking. My own son. Hours dragged like days. I lay there, the rope burning into my skin. My head ached from where I'd been struck. The men whispered among themselves, sometimes glancing at me like I was cargo instead of a mother. The young man who had first spoken in the attic, the one with tired eyes, looked the most restless. He kept rubbing his hands together, his lips moving as if whispering prayers. Once, when the others stepped outside to smoke, he crouched next to me. "Ma'am," he whispered quickly. "I didn't want this. I thought we were just supposed to scare you. Not this." I looked into his face, searching for truth. "Then help me," I begged softly. "Please, son. If you have any heart left, help me." His jaw clenched. His eyes shone with something close to tears. But before he could answer, the door slammed open and the scarfed man barked, "Back off. Don't get soft." The boy jumped back, fear written all over him. My hope flickered but did not die. The night deepened. The men argued in low voices, something about money and whether Daniel would keep his promises. The name Daniel stabbed me every time I heard it. My own child, the baby I had cradled, the boy I had prayed over, now giving orders to hurt me. Suddenly, the phone rang. The man with the hat answered. His voice dropped low, respectful. "Yes, we have her." Pause. "Yes, she's tied. She can't move." Another pause. Then, "Understood." He hung up and turned to the others. "He says not to touch her until he decides. But keep her quiet." Quiet. The word chilled me. Did that mean days? Weeks? Or worse, did it mean until the end? Sometime after midnight, I heard a noise outside. A crunch of gravel, a faint bark of a dog. The men stiffened. "Police," one whispered. "No," the scarf man said. "Too soon. But check anyway." 2 of them slipped out, leaving the boy with me. He looked at me again, his face torn. "This isn't right," he whispered. "You're somebody's mother. Somebody's grandmother." Tears filled my eyes. "I am a grandmother," I said, my voice breaking. "I baked cookies for my grandson last Christmas. I taught him how to ride his bike. What if it was your grandma lying here?" His lips trembled. He glanced at the door, then back at me. Slowly, his hand moved toward the rope at my wrists. "Please," I whispered. "Help me. You can walk away from this. You don't have to follow Daniel's orders. You can choose better." He hesitated, his fingers brushing the knot. For one heartbeat, hope flared bright. But then the door burst open. The scarfed man stormed in, his eyes blazing. "What are you doing?" he roared. The boy froze, his hand still near the rope. "Nothing," he stammered. The scarfed man shoved him hard against the wall. "You touch her again and you're done. You hear me? Done." The boy nodded quickly, fear swallowing him whole. He backed away, his face pale. The scarfed man turned to me, his eyes like ice. "You think you're clever, old woman? Trying to turn him soft? It won't work." He leaned close, his breath hot on my face. "We'll make sure you never see daylight again if you try that again." Then he grabbed the phone from his pocket, dialed a number, and spoke one sentence that froze my blood. "She's ready. Tell him he can come tonight." The moment those words left the scarfed man's mouth, "Tell him he can come tonight," my heart stopped. My son was coming. Daniel. The air inside that cabin grew so heavy. It was like breathing through cloth. I could hear the creak of the boards as the men moved around, preparing for him, their boots dragging like soldiers before a general. I closed my eyes, tears slipping down my face, not because I feared death, but because I still couldn't understand how a son I had carried in my womb, a boy whose forehead I had kissed every night, could walk into a room and face his mother as an enemy. Hours felt like years until headlights cut through the cracks in the cabin wall. An engine idled outside. Doors slammed. Heavy footsteps approached. My body shook against the ropes. The door creaked open. And there he was. Daniel. My Daniel. My baby boy, except he wasn't a boy anymore. He stood tall in a fine suit, his hair slicked back, his eyes colder than the night air. The men straightened, fear and respect mixed in their posture. He looked at me, tied to that chair, trembling. For a moment, just a flicker. His jaw tightened like he was fighting something inside. Then it was gone, and his face turned to stone. "So," he said, his voice calm, almost casual. "You made this harder than it had to be, Mom." My lips trembled. "Daniel, why?